Hey everyone, we've been granted permission by CrimeCon to play the session that we recorded there with famed death investigator Joseph Scott Morgan of the show Body Bags. Great show and great guy. We spoke with him about the subject of the possible New England serial killer, and the session was called Bodies in New England. Is there a serial killer among us? So we hope you enjoy this. Definitely let us know what you think on Spotify or YouTube. We're going to break quick for commercial here, and we'll be right back to play the session. Thanks a lot for listening.
From the podcast, Missing in Crawlspace, please welcome Tim Pillery and Lance Rienstierna. And from the Body Bags podcast, please welcome one of America's leading experts on applied forensics, Joseph Scott Morgan.
Hello. It's so nice to see everybody.
There's so many.
Yes.
Just want to thank the NFL for pushing the Broncos game to 4:30 so you can all attend this.
Awesome.
Appreciate it. We literally thought we were going to get 4 people.
Well, we should start by introducing ourselves. I am Tim Pillery of the Missing and Crawlspace podcasts.
I am the other half. I'm Lance Rienstierna, also of the Missing and Crawlspace podcasts.
And I'm Joseph Scott Morgan from Body Bags.
Okay, so how many people are familiar with the topic that we're discussing tonight? Oh, good.
Right.
Wow.
How many people know where New England is? And I'm being serious. Okay. And how many people are from New England?
Okay.
Okay, great. This is going to be good.
Awesome.
All right. Before we get started, though, who thinks the cases are connected? Okay.
Yes.
Wow. Okay. This is going to be really interesting.
Get ready to be debunked.
All right, so we are going to go through the timeline of deaths and bodies that have been recovered from New England starting in March of 2025. That's kind of when this whole phenomenon started. I think March, April, May, people started noticing bodies found in Massachusetts and wondering if they were connected.
I just have one more quick question. For those of you who know about this, how did you find out about it? Was it mainstream media, podcasts, or social media? I mean, how many heard about it through social media? Okay, mainstream media, like news, okay. All right, podcasts. Okay, so yeah, pretty much an even spread of like all of the various types of information distribution. Cool.
Okay, so early in March 6th of this year, the remains of Paige Fannin were found near Norwalk, Connecticut by the Norwalk Police Scuba team. And she had left her clothing and personal items on the bank of the Norwalk River before her body was discovered. So kind of curious how that happened. I should say her personal items and clothing were found there. I don't know if she left them there, but that's a possibility.
Right, so this gets like really nuanced and layered because we're gonna go through like the verbiage and what certain words mean and how it's interpreted and how they're like distributed to us as like the masses who are consuming it. And that's one of the reasons why we have this handsome devil on stage to help us with. I was talking about Tim. Well, it's actually funny because Tim normally doesn't allow anybody with better hair than him to come up on stage, so. All right, that's it for the comedy show.
Yeah.
My wife styles mine, so there you go.
All right, so on March 8th, the unidentified remains were discovered by a hunter in a wooded area in Plymouth, Massachusetts. There's no information on gender, age, or cause of death. So that's the second body so far in this series of bodies, and Plymouth, Massachusetts is like right at the entry of Cape Cod. It's the muscle of Cape Cod, almost the shoulder of Cape Cod.
Yeah, not very close.
If you guys can see this map, that's what.
So then a couple weeks later, in Groton, Connecticut, the remains of Suzanne Wormser were located near a cemetery. And not long after, there was a man named Donald Koffel, who was 68, who was charged with her murder. And he actually dismembered her and put her in a suitcase, and I think a bag as well, near the cemetery. Very disturbing story.
Yeah, anytime you get, when we cover dismemberment cases, the one fallback thing I always have from a forensics perspective is you have to have, first off, the right tools. You have to have a lot of privacy. And if you're using power tools, you have to have access to power. I guess you could get battery charged, maybe a Sawzall. And you have to have a certain level of skill in order to facilitate that. And I don't know, for lack of a better term, you have to have the intestinal fortitude to be able to do it, because a lot of the dismemberment cases that I've covered as a practitioner and the stuff that I've covered in the media, it's amazing how many of these cases people will get just into it, and they'll generally remove like a hand, a foot, maybe at the knee, and then all of a sudden they've got a torso. The head's easy to remove, but what do you do with the remainder? And that's generally, they kind of get frozen in that moment of panic and that sort of thing. So the fact that she's compacted to the point where she's in a suitcase, tells me that a lot of planning, went into that sort of thing. And let's face it, some serial killers, they dig dismemberment. It's happened in the past. It's happened in the recent past. It's going to happen again in the future. There's just some people that are inclined to that sort of thing.
Now, don't hate me here. Donald Koffel was arrested for this. 68 years old. Suzanne Wormser's family had alerted the FBI. Suzanne Wormser's roommate was Donald Koffel, and Donald Koffel is now deceased. He died of, some reports say lung cancer, some say pancreatic cancer, but he had several different cancers in his body. He died while in custody, and he killed her and dismembered her over a dispute of $200 worth of crack. So the thought of this serial killer now being caught, it's not him. This is not a 68-year-old man who will do something for over $200. He's not a serial killer mastermind. No. So, sorry, we can go to the next body.
Yeah, I mean, that is crazy, though, like how a guy like that age could do that. And I don't know, like, I know we're sticking with the time period that we're talking about here, but, I kind of wonder about that guy,
Yeah.
So then on March 20th, 2025, there was the remains of a missing New Haven, Connecticut mother named Denise Leary, and she was found in a wooded area near a residential neighborhood. And she had been missing since September of the previous year, and so there's no indication of criminality in this case. But this is a strange one because her disappearance was kind of suspicious, I would say. Mm-hmm. In that her bedroom door was locked from the inside, and she actually climbed out the window and met someone.
Yeah, she had had this moment where it was a couple of nights prior. Her son had said that she locked herself in her room, but it wasn't like there was a dispute and she was angry and locked herself in her room. She had put herself in her room, locked the door, and then she met somebody outside. Somebody picked her up, and she accessed them by going out her window. And then later on, she came back home, and he had no thoughts of like there was any fight or anything that happened, but he just didn't know who the person was, and he really couldn't describe the vehicle either. So put a pin in that. I mean, because we still don't know.
Well, yeah, she went missing at that point, right? Yeah.
No, she came back home.
She came back home at that point?
She came back home at that point.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
But then she went missing later.
Yeah.
Okay.
So on this one's one of my this one is one that I do like talking about because it is a call from the family to the media to please stop doing this. So we're not going to name the name of the person, but the remains of a woman were located The family believes her death is suspicious, but they are so adamant that it's not the work of a serial killer. So they've actually begged people to please take her name out of the whole serial killer thing, because they know what happened and they want to pursue whatever course of action they need to pursue in order to bring closure. And that's another one of those layers. It's like you can't backtrack the information that's out there. So even if you're not putting her name in the headlines now, you just do a quick Google search and you'll know who I'm talking about. And it's like this perpetual wheel. What is it, that Ouroboros thing, the snake that eats itself, that it just keeps happening over and over and over, no matter how hard you try to stop it.
Yeah, and there's no way to really get back from that once the name is out there and they're forever associated with it. And let's face it, if you increase the parameters of where these are happening, we could go on forever and ever to infinity about all of the deaths that have occurred in a particular area that are of some kind of suspicious nature. Just because something is suspicious on one level doesn't necessarily make it a homicide. There's no commonality many times with things. And, right now, one of the things that's really coming to mind for me is Lady Bird Lake in Austin, Texas. I know that you guys have heard about that. We've heard it on body bags, that people swear up and down that is the work of a serial killer. Well, if you jump back beyond that, how many other people have died in Lady Bird Lake? And are any of them connected in any way? And I'm talking about cause of death primarily.
I just want to ask you a question about the condition of Denise Leary's body. When it was found, Denise Leary, the one that was just mentioned before the unmentioned one, her body was found in such a state of decay that they couldn't determine the gender or the age at the site of her, her body site. So at the time when they discovered her, they couldn't determine age or gender. What has to happen we're at CrimeCon, so there are going to be graphic descriptions of things, but what are what has to happen in order to not be able to determine gender?
Yeah, and so if you can't determine gender, that would fall to this idea that you've got probably a skeletonized body at that point in time, where you're looking at soft tissue, and there's many more, obviously, we're all adults. There are certain markers that you look with the body. So they're having to go through kind of the bony prominences. You think about the pubis, you think about the width of the hips and all that sort of thing. And also, with female skeletons, the skeleton itself, they use this wonderful term. It's called gracile. I love that word, and it means fine, as opposed to males that are robust. So you might not initially be able to understand that immediately, but you'd have to go back to the lab, to the anthro lab, primarily render the bones down so that you can do a fine examination. But the big thing is you want to try to understand causality. And let's face it, y'all, unless you've got like a defect in a skull, either from a projectile or from bludgeoning or something like that, many times when you only have skeletal remains, you're not going to come up with something definitive. It will remain undetermined because you can't appreciate things, baseline things, just like hemorrhage, all right? Because it's gone. It's gone at that point.
Right. And you just brought up causality, and that's where we can get into some of the minutia of the verbiage when we're reading something. I mean, Tim and I have been doing the podcast thing in true crime for 10 years, and thank you. Don't hold the. Thank you so much. So I was kidding, but don't worry. But I didn't know the difference when I'm reading something in mainstream media or in social media, and they say the cause of death, the manner of death. What's the difference between cause of death and manner of death?
Well, unlike the law that's got this huge canon of criminal law that those people, lawyers, those people, they select from what they're going to charge, medical legal is very simple. We've only got 5 manners of death, and it's what I call the umbrella of death. So if you think about natural, undetermined, accidental, homicide, and suicide, it's like a gigantic umbrella. And then you think about the causal factors: gunshot wound, blunt force trauma, motor vehicle accident, suffocation, heart attack, or MI, cancer. All of those things will fit in multiple categories underneath the umbrella. And so it's rather simplistic, but many times you will have these events that will occur where they'll have a a manner, they suspect that it might be homicide. And I know you guys have heard this on the air because they'll say non-specific homicidal trauma. You hear that. You hear that a lot. It's kind of a weasel term. And it's like they can't pinpoint it, but they're going to rule it as a homicide.
How many people just learned that right now? Don't make me feel like I'm alone in this. Just, even if you, thank you. Yeah, thank you for that.
Yeah. No worries, man.
And thank you for that.
All right, so that was the month of March. We've touched on several states now, Massachusetts, Connecticut, Rhode Island, and now on to April 9th of 2025. There were unidentified human remains located in Killingly, Connecticut, and there was no information on gender, age, or cause of death. So this is really a tough one. Could very well be another sort of old case. What do you think, Joseph, when you hear something like that, like the media puts out, there's
it's very non-specific. That means that if they're, well, it all depends on what the police are releasing to them. And sometimes people get rather speculative. The media gets speculative, and they get antsy. And, then you have people that are in social media, and they'll speak with authority, and that doesn't necessarily mean that they are an authoritative source about it. But if they're not getting information from the police and it's very non-specific, again, my default position is there's something that's preventing that, inhibiting that in some way. Most of the time, in my world, if we can't come up with something, first stop is probably going to be skeletal remains. Secondly, you can have a body that's intact and you still are scratching your head at the end of the day because there's nothing in tox. You don't have any trauma. And, an old pathologist I used to work with, he would say, this is called God called. And so people just fall over dead. And sometimes you just don't have an explanation. And if somebody falls dead in the woods, they fall dead in the woods. It doesn't mean that it's necessarily a traumatic event. Sometimes people just cease breathing, and it does happen. It's happened many times in my career.
Just want to bring up two quick points here. I think this story, this particular body wouldn't have been as much of a part of the story if the town wasn't called Killingly. And that sounds funny, but
no.
It worked so well into the narrative that was just starting to really ramp up now. So another body's found, Killingly, Connecticut. So that just looks amazing there on social media and mainstream media headlines. And so you start thinking, this is my second point, you start saying like, well, how far away is this from this from this? And then you're like, you have to take a step back and say, these are in such bad states of decomposition, so you can't say, could someone have traveled from Plymouth, Mass. Here in that time period? Because these aren't chronological. They're chronologically found the way we're describing them, but the deaths aren't chronological, so you can't say, oh, you can't travel 300 miles in 4 hours, or you could travel this far in 2 days. This body could have been years.
Again, that's going to require, if they've been out there for a protracted period of time, it's not just people specific to my field. It would be like a forensic anthropologist who not only would want to examine the body or the remains in a lab, they physically have to go out there because there's all kinds of sign that they look for on the ground. You also begin to think about, was the body, I use the term memorialized in any way? Mm-hmm. Were they just discarded, like rubbish, and that does happen? Or was there an attempt to cover the body or bury the body? And again, that goes to maybe a homicidal nature of something because somebody has taken due care with the body at that point in time. But yeah, you would need a set of eyes on this that could give you a timeline, and that's very important here. The timeline and geographic deposition of these bodies all over the place.
Right.
And we know that serial killers, for the most part, not all of them, but they do try to, I hate this term, but they do hunt in specific areas that they're very familiar with. And there are exceptions to that rule, but most of the time they're going to remain in a particular area because they feel comfortable there doing what they do, like BTK.
Exactly. One more quick thing and then we can go to the next one. This is at about the time where we start hearing and reading reports from law enforcement saying, please stop saying this. So the details start becoming less and less because they're giving the media less and less, because they're starting to see New England serial killer and they're starting to see NESK. That's starting to take off now.
And they say, stop talking about that. That's not true.
Perfect impersonation.
Well, they really have made statements like that,
Yeah.
Saying there is no cause for alarm from the public. There is nothing definitive connecting these bodies. But of course they're going to say that, right?
I've always found it interesting how NISK rhymes with LISK. And that's something that has run through this, because LISK has really been ramping up, and it just seems kind of convenient that this pops up on the narrative as well. At the same time.
East Coast too.
And we'll be right back after a quick word from our sponsors.
Thanks to our sponsors, and now we're back to the program.
So on April 21st, 2025, Pawtucket, Rhode Island police pulled a body from the Seekonk River. Really not much information on that as well.
This is your theory, so you can do the Megan Meredith one.
All right, it's not a theory
it's
at
a fact.
this point. So on April 22nd, 45-year-old Megan Meredith's body was found near a bike path in Springfield, Massachusetts. And this death is considered a homicide. No cause of death has been determined, but they are pretty certain that this was a homicide. And she actually died on the way to the hospital. Now, this is where social media comes in, because there's no details about how she was murdered. But social media says that her throat was slashed, and we'll get more into that in a few minutes.
So on April 23rd, 41-year-old Andrew Gempel and 42-year-old Jonathan Thompson were found beaten and stabbed to death, their bodies burned in dirt. Okay, so this is clearly a malicious act. 30-year-old Jay Blodgett was arrested, facing 2 counts of murder, and he, the quote from the prosecutor says, "We eventually found 2 individuals with apparent blunt force trauma and stab wounds that were deceased. They were hidden in the woods by various items of dirt." And that was the prosecutor, James Gubitos. And that was in Salem, Massachusetts. And Jay Blodgett is an unhoused gentleman who probably went into a fit of rage. And again, at that point, a lot of the information on this individual stops because they don't want to continue to perpetrate any rumor that he might have been involved in the previous bodies that have been discovered.
Okay, and then on April 25th, a man named Samuel Stovall, who was 51 years old, of Taunton, Massachusetts, was found in Mill River by people walking, and he had obvious signs of decomposition. And the office of the district attorney said that the death is not deemed suspicious, but an investigation remains open.
So what would be the harm in releasing more information about the state of bodies?
I don't know. One of the problems is that that you run into is that you have these inflammatory events that happen in multiple locations, and the police will not give out more information to kind of knock it down a little bit. Sometimes silence is not golden. That doesn't mean you have to give away everything. And this goes to the broader picture. Many times I've been on 2 task force involving serial killings in my career, and anytime you mention the word task force, automatically you're committed at that point because you suspect that there is in fact someone at work here. And you've got multi-jurisdictions in this area as well. I know it sounds like I'm going off on a tangent, I'm really not. And if you have a task force, then they have a slow release of information, in my experience. Now you've got these varied police departments that are working these things, and these deaths might have otherwise occurred anyway they're being serialized now, And they're not going to release any further information until they have something more substantive. Now, if you got a decomposed body in the water and you're not seeing any kind of trauma, well, was it a heart event? Well, sometimes if he's decomposed that badly, you might not be able, depending upon the level, you might not be able to tell what the natural course was that happened, if it is in fact a natural. It can also eradicate some trauma, like I've previously mentioned. So they're left scratching their head, and many times these cases are just left undetermined. For the general public, anytime they hear undetermined, many times that smacks of suspicion. Sometimes you just don't have scientific answers.
Yeah, okay. So this is another one that just gets my mind like kind of reeling here. Off of what you said, the next person we're going to speak about is 39-year-old Stephen Myers. He was found in a construction site, also in Taunton, Massachusetts. The DA said that Myers died, quote, as a result of a gunshot wound, end quote. So you just mentioned like the interpretation, right, of statements. I can't help myself. And we're learning, like with you guys, as we've done coverage on this, we're learning as the audience is learning because it's real-time developing information. When I heard that, my first thought went to gunshot wound to the head. I mean, that's just where my thought went. So it's the interpretation. It didn't say gunshot wound to the head. It said died of a gunshot wound. So this could be self-inflicted. It could be an accidental one. But it was, I don't know, intentionally left for interpretation. But is that like, when you hear that, does your brain go to gunshot wound to the head?
No, not necessarily. I mean, I've had people that have taken their life, and I've had people that are self-inflicted in the abdomen, the chest. I've even had people that have self-inflicted gunshot wounds to the back of their own head, and to give the impression that it's suspicious. That has happened. It happened twice to a colleague of mine, as a matter of fact. And those are real outliers, but it does happen. And just because it is a gunshot wound doesn't necessarily mean that someone else had a hand in it. Because there's accidental shootings, there's self-inflicted shootings, and obviously homicidal. And yeah, we're back to the big U word again. Many times you'll have gunshot wounds that lead to someone's death, and the coroner or the medical examiner will leave it undetermined. And again, you're stirring the pot with that because you haven't come up with a manner that satisfies the general public. And the general public, hey, listen, you guys have an interest in this, particularly if you live in this area. I've got people falling over dead. I want to know why, because it's a matter of public safety. Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, the public has a right to know.
Mm-hmm. So at this point, we have different geographic locations that are apart by hundreds of miles, different genders, age groups, and like social conditions.
Okay, so on April 30th, 72-year-old Glastonbury, Connecticut resident Mary Colasanto, who had been reported missing, was found in the Connecticut River in the town of Rocky Hill, Connecticut. And there was no further details available at the time.
So you're going to hear more of that, no further details available. Again, the perception now, I don't know who's familiar with the Connecticut River Valley killer that was going on. There was a series of murders that happened in upstate Vermont, New Hampshire, kind of midway through along the Connecticut River Valley. That happened in the late 70s to late 80s. Still unsolved. And again, I don't know if it's intentional. It can't be intentional because that's literally where she was found. But the interpretation is subconscious. If you know the Connecticut River Valley killer, it just makes you think serial killer again.
Okay, so on May 7th, 2025, the murdered remains of 35-year-old Nyasha Mendez were found at the Evergreen Cemetery in New Haven, Connecticut. Second case that has to do with a cemetery in Connecticut, just kind of randomly maybe. Edwin Arroyo Roman of New Haven was charged with Mendez's murder as well as tampering with evidence. And interestingly, this fellow Edwin Arroyo Roman not only confessed to Mendez's murder, but he confessed to 3 other murders in Puerto Rico.
Okay, so Joseph Scott Morgan, your opinion on the distant, the areas in which we're speaking, Puerto Rico and New England. Is this somebody who might have started in Puerto Rico and is now continuing? Is that common
Oh, yeah, I would certainly think that it could potentially be if he has a taste for it at that point in time, particularly if you have comfort. And you'd have to ask a question about the perpetrator. Have they been domiciled in a particular location? I don't know about you guys, but I've moved many times in my life, all right, to my great chagrin. And it takes time to learn the area, to be familiar. And if you're in your own community, let's just say, for instance, there's a Puerto Rican community in this area. He interacts with that community, he gets used to the area, and suddenly if he has a target of this one poor woman that's found deceased in a graveyard, yeah, he would have a taste for it. He would understand what he would need to do to pull this off and maybe not get captured. And well, fortunately, he has been captured. It's fascinating, though, that you have these other three in Puerto Rico. One of the things I'd be very interested in is more the specifics about, again, causal effects of death, and also were the bodies posed in any way? Were they left out in the open? Mm-hmm. Were they visible? Were they, again, memorialized by being buried, or were they just kind of discarded off onto the side of the road? And that would be an area where a profiler would get involved and begin to paint this picture, kind of fill in the blanks and say, wow, and does he hunt outside of his race? Does he hunt outside of people that are non-English speakers? All of these little factors, go into this great big kind of gumbo that you have here where you're trying to understand it.
So just in case law enforcement, and thank you for that answer.
Yeah.
Just in case law enforcement was thinking to themselves, okay, we're getting a handle on controlling the narrative here. Maybe the headlines are going to calm down a little bit. People on the beach near Watch Hill in Westerly, Rhode Island, find what appeared to be a human leg bone, and they find it about 200 yards from Taylor Swift's mansion. So now we've got Taylor Swift in the headlines, which I'm sure thrilled law enforcement when the headline reads, is Taylor Swift connected to the rumored New England serial killer? New England serial killer victim remains possibly found on Taylor Swift's property. Because no one Google searches Taylor Swift, right? I mean, so that was followed by several highly speculative articles, but the conclusion is really tragic. I mean, this was a man who was missing, the leg bone matched him, and by all accounts, it seems like he ended his life by going into the ocean.
Yeah, his name is Eric Ween, 31 years old, of Massachusetts.
So, family members now are, they're trying to control that storyline. And again, no more details are really available on that.
Well, let me interject here real quick. For a number of years, I was appearing on HLN, and there were, how many of you guys remember the feet that were washing up on the shore?
Yes.
out in Washington? And that was a unique phenomenon, but none of those were ever proven to be the work of a serial killer. As a matter of fact, interestingly enough, from a scientific standpoint, these are bodies that had gone in a variety of locations, and these feet were contained in footwear. And so the footwear held on to the remnant of the body. And so they would wash up, and this is a real dynamic kind of shoreline in this area where they're floating about and swirling about. And look, I'd be shocked too if I'm walking down the beach, up around Seattle in that area, and I look down, wow, look, a foot. And so, and
wait, that would shock you?
Yeah, well, yeah, it would even shock me. So there you go. Don't want to step into that, but anyway, you did get that. Anyway, so yeah, that does happen, and just because you have bones washing up in a particular area, there are a lot of people that unfortunately cast themselves off into water and to take their own life. Some people fall over dead in these environments, and again, you're at the mercy of nature at that point in time.
Yep.
Okay, and I do just want to comment real quick on the previous story. This Edwin Arroyo Roman, he could actually be a serial killer in this story. We don't know. The thing about the murders in Puerto Rico that he confessed to, there's been no media coverage that I've seen on that at all. So I don't know if that's true or not, but This could be our first serial killer in this story. It's possible. But certainly not responsible for all of them, in my opinion. Okay, so May 30th, 34-year-old Jasmine Wilkes was discovered dead in New Haven's Edgewood Park, and the cause and manner, excuse me, the cause and manner is pending further studies.
That's New Haven, Connecticut. On June 1st, the body of Adriana Suazo was found in a wooded area by passerbys in Milton, Massachusetts. Milton, Massachusetts is maybe 20 minutes south of Boston. Quote, no signs of obvious trauma. This is obviously going to be redirected at you. The chief medical examiner is investigating the cause of her death. What do you think when you hear that a young woman's body was found on the side of essentially in a wooded area? It was on the side of a road with no signs of obvious trauma.
My default position on something like this, first off, I'd have to know what the level of decomposition was and what the status of her body was at that point.
Yeah, hardly any no decomposition.
Okay, so then we have tox, and you can get samples from any number, particularly if someone is what we refer to as the fresh dead, and even if they are in an advanced state. I don't know if you guys know this, but we can actually have an individual that is decomposed, markedly decomposed, and take a sample of their liver and actually spin it down. I don't know if you've ever heard of that, but you can spin down a portion of the liver and extract things like opiates. You can see if there's cocaine metabolite in there and that sort of thing. But with the fresh dead, you can do blood draws, you can do vitreous draws out of the eye, bile, urine. And how long has she been down now? Do you know? How long ago was that?
Oh, this was June 1st.
Okay, we're in the first part of September right now. I would really keep my ear to the ground on this one, because I would think that you would have tox that would come back. Also, her stomach contents are very significant here as well. Was there any particulate drug matter that was in there? And they would be very, very thorough. Obviously, when they did the autopsy, they're not seeing anything that's glaring on the gross dissection. It's troubling to me, though, that she's found immediately adjacent to the road. I've had a number of cases over the years where there was drug involvement, and not like a homicide, but if someone is associated with people that are using drugs, not in this case, I don't know anything about that to that degree for the investigation. If someone dies around drug abusers, the drug abusers many times, this used to happen a lot in shooting galleries, what they used to call shooting galleries with heroin addicts. They would load an individual up in a car and transport the body as far away from the place that they can get them, dump the body, and then go back to where they do drugs. And I don't know, I'm sure that they're looking into every bit of this at this point in time, but we're right on the outer fringe, though, for tox to be coming back in a case like this.
Mm-hmm. And there has been no updates on that case since she was found. So then we go to July 3rd, 2025. Paddleboarder Sunshine Stewart was murdered and found on a 100-acre island on Crawford Pond in Maine. And this was a murder. And police acted very quickly in making some moves on this case. They actually arrested a 17-year-old named Devin Young, charged him with murder. I believe there's some debate right now if he will be charged as an adult or not. But this is a big fella, too. He actually posted a picture of himself to Facebook, and he's holding a rifle. And I believe he posted that picture after Sunshine Stewart's murder, but before his arrest. And he's like 6'1", like he's a big kid.
He's a big kid, yeah. And again, like with verbiage and semantics, we don't know if he took that picture after, but he did post it after he cut her throat and bludgeoned her in the head. Her murder was solved very quickly. There was a campground that was monitored by several cameras, like hunting cameras, and they caught her going out on this little pond on her paddleboard, and then he was in articles, the manager had said she had seen him following her out there like rowing out there in his boat, but we don't know if he had seen her on the shore and then decided to do what he did to her, or if he was out there as well and then kind of looped around and followed her. Also, believe me, I wish we did have the video element showing you all of this stuff. But this is an area that's, I believe, an hour and a half north of Portland. So it's almost like it's up there in Maine. And this Sunshine Stewart was described as being basically the epitome of her name. She did a number of things. She was very much an outdoors person. She was a lobsterman. She was a captain of sailboats.
Marine biologist.
A microbiologist.
Marine biologist.
Oh, I'm sorry, a marine biologist. And a really heartwarming part of the story is that when the public found out that she was a captain, a bunch of other captains in the area and outside of the area actually got together and later on gave her like a proper captain send-off, which I thought was just like one of those moments where it's taking that headline that they read and doing something good, which was really nice.
Yeah.
And we should say allegedly about this Devin Young suspect, he has not been found guilty at this point.
Oh, true, yeah. Oh, also, he had assisted in the search for her. So he had actually taken police out to an area that wasn't where he left the body and sort of did a goose chase, and he said something to them. We don't know what it was, but it's quoted as the police who he was with said basically what he was telling them raised suspicion, gradually raised their suspicion where they had to take him in, and then they connected with the manager of the campground and matched the video footage. So I don't know, he tried to be something there, and maybe we stopped a serial killer before he got a taste for it. But what's the bludgeoning, cutting of the neck, following? Do you think that this was premeditated or spontaneous?
It's probably a lust killing. More lust killing, where he spots her, and he sees an opportunity, because this was on this little island out in the middle. No one could, she's trapped at that point in time. This poor woman's just enjoying herself on a paddleboard. And if this kid sees her from the bank, allegedly, and follows her out there, I mean, if you're paddleboarding or kayaking, who wouldn't like to go out to a nice little pristine island in the middle of a pond in Maine, of all places? Beautiful. And then he sees this opportunity. If he's camping there, he might see, he might think that she's easy pickings, if you will. And unfortunately, it turned out that she probably was.
No, it's like heartbreaking because I'm just based on the description of her, it sounds like the interaction initially was probably very welcoming on her part. Yeah. She was probably having a conversation with him, and it's tragic when you lose somebody and with her accomplishments and knowing that she could have continued and done continued the good that she was doing.
Yeah. I also want to note that police have not said that she was sexually assaulted, but that is on social media, and specifically the New England Serial Killer Facebook group that has been covering this. The moderator of that group, he even notes that it's pure speculation, but he says that she was sexually assaulted. We don't know that to be true.
Yeah. And believe us, we want to go real deep and get into this, but you'd be here for 3 hours, so we're kind of truncating. So I just looked at the time, which is why I just said that.
And we'll be right back after a quick word from our sponsors.
Thanks to our sponsors, and now we're back to the program.
That is pretty much the list of the bodies found between March and July. And once Sunshine Stewart was murdered, the articles about the New England serial, or I should say once Devin Young was arrested, that the articles seemed to slow down a little bit. I don't know if it got too real or something. It's certainly entered a new era of this story because, we're talking about a 17-year-old killer or a potential 17-year-old killer, and that is so rare and disturbing.
And that he would have the means to serialize any kind of event like this at this young age, to be able to facilitate certainly traveling in this gigantic area, this landmass, hundreds and hundreds of miles away. Somebody's going to notice, the people that are in charge of him, whoever they are, and does he have the facility in order to be able to do this? Because we've got, and it's not, look, I know that we started in March, but if you just back up, again, a few months back, there are other deaths out there. I was reading what did I tell you? I think it was an article in Salon or whatever it was. They said that some of these media posts, social media posts go back, there's some people speculated there were 600. I'm thinking, what? How do you come up with 600? So it's so broad and so wide ranging. You can target a specific area, I guess, chronologically and say, yeah, all of these are connected. But, for me, from a forensic standpoint and purely forensics, I'd like to know what the methodology of death was. And right now, in most of these cases, we're absent that. And that's an essential ingredient to this in order to understand a serialized event. Because most of these people that do this sort of thing have a methodology that they stick to, they adhere to it over and over and over again. It's not always the case, but most of the cases that I've covered that were serialized, not covered but worked on, let's see. As a matter of fact, I think I've worked on 3 series of serial killers in County New Orleans and Atlanta. Every single one of those series were asphyxiations. Every single one. I never had a knife. I never had a bludgeoning. I never had a shooting. Yeah. They were all strangulations. Yeah. Or ligature. Yeah.
Wow, that's really personal too. Like
it's very up close and personal.
Yeah.
And I've had them. The shortest group that I had was like 6, and the longest one was still going when I left New Orleans. And at the time, I think they were calling him like the I-10 killer or something. And they had thought that they had tied cases all the way from Jacksonville, Florida, to Beaumont, Texas. And we just happened to be, I think I caught 2 of those. So, and it was not at a collusion. Of course, the default position on cases like that is they always think that it's an overland trucker, somebody that can move about. And those are cases where people, but they stick to these areas that are very close to highways, truck stops, and all those sorts of things. Yep.
Okay. But over the course of the past couple of days, Tim has been telling, and maybe he's told some of you when you came up to our table, that we were going to simultaneously debunk this and then name the killer.
Really?
Well, so it is interesting to me that if you do move the dates around a little bit and sort of, I don't know, I guess, search for non-murder victims, it's interesting what we find. So in June, early June in Springfield, Mass, there was a man who was arrested. His name is Ahmed Ahmed. He's 53 years old. He pulled a teenage boy into a park on a Friday evening and sexually assaulted him. This 17-year-old boy ran away and was chased on foot by this Ahmed Ahmed about a mile. So he chased him running. This kid got home, called the police. This Ahmed Ahmed fellow was arrested, I think it was 2 days later, charged with kidnapping, aggravated rape during the commission of a felony, witness intimidation, stalking, and assault and battery with a deadly weapon. He is being held under pretrial detention for 120 days, and that was as of June 17th, 2025. So he seems like he will see prison time, but he may get out before he goes to trial, actually. I'm not quite sure about that. But it's interesting because we did speak about Megan Meredith, who was found also in Springfield. And she is the victim of a murder. And Megan Meredith's body was found about a mile away from this Johnny Appleseed Park. She was found also in a park. And then if you back up the dates just a little bit to before when this phenomenon, I guess, started, there was a murder also in Springfield, a woman named Joanne Garelli. She was found on January 7th of 2025 by someone walking their dog. And she was found also in a park in Springfield, Forest Park. And she suffered a neck wound, police say. And I think it's interesting because these 3 locations are all parks. They're all within 2 miles of each other, all in the same city.
So when you hear neck wound, that gets translated to throat was cut.
Yeah.
But when you hear neck wound, what's your first instinct?
I'm going to say what kind of neck wound, because people can have their necks wounded in any number of ways. Are they talking about markers like abraded areas, contusions? That's a wound. Or is it a sharp force injury? Because in our world, we say sharp force injury. That can either be a stab or an incised wound, which is a slice, which is more shallow, obviously, than a stab. You can call a neck wound, a gunshot wound, a neck wound. So it's very non-specific again. And does that pattern persist in all these? I find these cases particularly intriguing because you do have a geographic element here, particularly when you begin to talk about parks. But similarities, was there any evidence of sexual assault in the other 2? Because we have this young fellow that was, obviously sexually assaulted according to him. He's fleeing, and if these are associated, how did he get away and the others did not get away?
Yeah, it's a great question. He chased the kid, so I do think, he dragged him into the park. So I do think he was intending to murder this 17-year-old boy. I cannot find official information, I should say, about whether or not Joanne Gorelli and Megan Meredith were sexually assaulted. Social media says that's a very good possibility. They are also saying that the cause of death was something to do with Megan Meredith's throat as well. But again, that is part on social media. I don't think that's been released by police officially. Interestingly, she was unresponsive when she was found by police and then later died on the way to the hospital. So that kind of tells me it probably wasn't a bloody scene, but I don't know. What do you think, Joseph?
Yeah, and that's heavily dependent upon, I'm fascinated that she survived for that amount of time. And if it's a neck wound, they would have to jump pretty quickly once they got there to first off close that off. Let's just say that it is an incised wound. And did they do any kind of sexual assault kit on her at autopsy? I'm assuming that they would have. Most of the time, particularly with females, we're going to do one every single time: nail scrapings, hair samples, nail clippings, and then we'll do a standard rape kit on female victims. We'll do them on males too, but primarily on female victims like this. Again, going back to the causal effects of her death relative to this neck wound, did she bleed out at the scene? Was there any bloodletting on the other young woman? And again, was she sexually assaulted? And that's going to be the connectivity. That's why, I'd mentioned, previously about the young kid that allegedly killed the paddleboarder, being a lust-driven thing. Many times these are. It's really odd, though, to hear them talk about someone literally snatching a young man and dragging him into the park like this. It sounds very spontaneous, if you will. Yeah.
Well, we just have a few minutes left. We're going to do questions. Maybe we could get in a couple of questions in the 7-ish minutes. Does anybody have any questions? They're going to be, I believe, passing the mic around.
Hello. I have more of a comment, first of all. Joe Scott and Kimmy, I've been looking for you guys this whole convention to say hi. So,
how are you?
Hi. But my question is, why do you think people are so eager to connect these cases? Is it because it's more scary to think of so many separate people killing versus one big boogeyman, or what is your opinion on that?
Directed at me?
Oh, to everyone.
Oh, okay. My opinion, I think that people desire to see connectivity. It helps them explain things that are unexplainable. And a lot of spare time. That's what I believe many times. And your mind gets to stirring. Maybe you see something and you think that you might know a bit more than the police have, and so you superimpose, your opinions over the top of it. And it's okay to do that. It's just when it gets damaging, I think is a real risk. Because are there any peripherals that are involved in this that could be harmed by making a comment about it in the blogosphere or on social media? That's something people have to be very careful of.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
No, thank you.
Hi.
Hi.
I don't remember hearing anything about using statistics to compare these killings or deaths to prior years. It would be nice to know if they had said, well, this is the average number of deaths unexplained for the past 20 or I don't know how many years during that time period, excuse me.
Yeah, I mean, there are statistics. I mean, Springfield's much better now, but there is a high homicide rate in Springfield, unsolved homicide rate. But that's again like another like very convoluting part of the story, which is they're all kind of average. They're all not like the Taunton, Massachusetts, for example, very safe place. Milton, Massachusetts, a very low crime rate, very low violent crime rate there. So, I mean, if we had more time, I would love to get into like the nitty gritty of that. But yeah, I would say the place with the highest like violent crime rate would have been Springfield, Massachusetts, Hampden County, where the boy had escaped a potential murder, like his potential murder, and the two women, Megan
Morelli and Megan Meredith.
Yep, that's where they were from. I hope that kind of answered it.
Yeah, it does. As a comment, when I hear hoofbeats, I think horses and not zebras most of the time. So.
Say that again, sorry.
When you hear hoofbeats.
Yeah, oh, yeah.
Don't you think of horses before you think of zebras?
Yeah.
Okay.
Gotcha.
Hi, good afternoon. Thank you for being here. Quick question. My geography is not great, but has there been any investigation or questioning links of the victims or even the suspect into the Gilgo Beach murders and Rex Heuermann? It's sort of in the same area, or is it not?
It's not terribly far, I suppose, but to my knowledge, there's been no investigation in, checking that connection out.
Okay. Check it out.
Yeah, no, we definitely will. Yeah, police have made some comments on this overarching story, and recently too, and even said that they're following it and considering it, basically, any of these to be connected, but at this point, they have not found any connections. They're also very quiet in Springfield about these two murders. I'm sure rightfully so, but yeah.
So talking about death on almost a daily basis can be quite heavy. What are the things that the three of you do just to kind of decompress and not feel like a depression or a sadness all the time when you're constantly reading these things?
Oh my goodness, what a great answer, because we were actually back in the speaker ready room and we were like laughing so hard that tears were, and not about this, we were just telling stories. And I mean, the fact that Tim accidentally put his laptop in a pile of frosting that was in his chair and right in the, right, so I think what I'm trying to say is, and I'll let Joseph Scott Morgan elaborate a little bit more, is like, if we're going to be talking about death all the time, it's really okay to have a sense of humor about something and you need to have these conversations, right? We need to talk about this so we can get better educated on everything. Like I learned probably 15 things right now from him today and from you guys, but it's a lot easier to open the door to these conversations if you have a laugh, if you make a joke and we're all and we just get into a comfortable space. So specifically, I like to mow the lawn.
I've got a really old pontoon boat, and I love cigars in Rome. But I got to tell you, if you think about humor, there's nothing wrong with humor. You don't want to use it at the expense of others. But I'll give you you know why I agreed to do this with these guys? Have any idea? What's the name of their podcast? Everybody say it. Come on, Crawlspace, right?
Yeah.
Do you realize how many body bags I have drug into crawl spaces in order to put bodies out of crawl spaces into body bags in order to remove them from home? So it was a natural fit. I'm the body bags guy, and they're the crawl space guy. So you gotta look at it that way. There you go.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Hi.
Hi.
So I have a question about, like, you know, the statistic that there's anywhere between 25 and 50 serial killers active, like, at any time. So my question is, like, what do you think are some of the biggest roadblocks in being able to identify that murders are related, and to just be able to say, like, there is a serial killer, not even necessarily, like, identify who it is, but...
Traveling, I would say, between jurisdictions and states, I think definitely will complicate the investigations and can certainly keep people committing those acts.
Yeah, I also think, like, this is a really layered and, like, kind of nuanced and delicate conversation about this one in particular, because law enforcement has to handle so many different avenues of information, or that's coming at them. They have to now somehow manage social media. You know, back in the day there was print media, newspapers, and there was more like personal, right? Everyone's a reporter on TikTok now. So that fuels a narrative that necessarily isn't driven by the investigation. Point here is that you saw, as we went into the details, there's no further details. And I feel like even as much as they try to, the more the law enforcement tries to say, and they've released a bullet point statement saying there's no demographic connection, there's no geographic connection, there's no social connection. There's people out there saying that's because the serial killer is really smart. It's like, the more that they try to debunk it, the worse it gets. So I think that has a lot to do with it. But that being said, don't stop doing what you all do, because you all do it very responsibly. One more quick story. Tim, I wish we had a video to show you this, but Tim showed me this video that this woman posted on TikTok when everything was like, New England's in the grip of terror. Serial killer grips New England in a reign of terror. This woman is like on a dirt road taking a video of herself, just terrified. There's nothing to the video. Like, that's all it was. It's 10 seconds of her like looking scared, like someone's following her. And it's funny at first, but then it's like, no, I'm thinking about Abby and Libby taking their video. Like, don't like that, and that's where it starts getting like pretty. We only have a minute and 56 seconds.
We're
Yeah, sorry.
overtime by 2 minutes.
Oh, we're overtime. Oh my God. Okay, so you get what I'm saying. Thank you.
Okay. Last question. Thank you.
Sorry. I grew up in
That's okay.
in Groton, Connecticut. That's where I lived my whole life, and it's a big military town.
Ooh.
They have the Submariner base there. Have they looked at this from a military aspect, possibly? Like, are there, stations in these other places to maybe try and connect that?
Awesome. No idea. That's great. Yeah. This is why we did this. Yeah, that's a great point. We'll start looking into that. Yeah. And we've been covering it on the show. We've been airing it on both feeds, right?
Yep.
Yeah, so anytime there's an update, we'll provide the update. And we will look into that question and, listen when we release an update, because I would love to know that as well. I didn't. Look at that. She's from the area. She says that there's a military presence there. I think that's amazing. Thank you.
Well, thank you all so much.
Thank you all so much.
For hanging out with us. Really appreciate it.